to tonight's special work session of the Village of Vicksburg, Michigan. Today's January 16th, 2023 at 6 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order, and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll take a moment of silence here and gather our thoughts. Christian, if you would, please take a roll call. And just by note, Ryan Wagner is excused today.
Trustee Olson?
Here.
Trustee Fields?
Here.
Trustee Holmes?
Here.
Trustee Reister?
Here.
President Pro Tem Keller?
Here.
President Frisbee?
Here. We have an agenda in front of us. Jim, there was no changes. Any of the council has any changes or wishes they want, or we'll entertain
No, sir.
a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by trustee Keller, support by trustee Reister. Roll call. Voice call, so all those in favor? Say
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We have an agenda in front of us tonight. We have our Aaron Stevens with Master Custodian and Steve Breyer as Siegfried Crandall. They're going to talk to us tonight about the budget, the audit review, for 22-23. Excuse me. 2021, 2020.
21-22.
21, 22. You can see by your agenda, I was a little confused. It says 2021. But it is, indeed.
So my name's Steve Breyer. I'm an audit partner with Siegfried Crandall. I've been doing governmental audits for about 25 years now. So I've been working with the village since 2015. And when I first came in, village wasn't in the best shape financially. In 2014, the village had a fund balance in your general fund of about $76,000. And comparing that to your expenditures, it was about 5% of your total general fund expenditures. So your fund balance was in a kind of a sad state. And in 2015, it improved a little bit, but then in 2016, Jim Mallory came on. And from then on, the fund balance every year in the general fund has just been improving dramatically. So, as I said, in 2014, it was $76,000 of unassigned fund balance and total fund balance. In 2022, at the end of the year, the general fund's unassigned fund balance was $871,000. Now, that's just the unassigned piece. So that grew by over 1,000%, which is amazing. I mean, we do not see this in our profession and hardly anywhere. Never, actually. This is the only place. I really enjoy coming here because it's kind of it's a happy story. I don't have to go through any heartaches. I mean, in 2016, the village had 10 audit comments, and I remember going to the presentation. The I-team was here from Channel 3, and I sat with Jim, and I went over each of the comments, and in his first year, he had those comments. He had a resolution to each of those audit comments, each of the 10. He had an idea of what he was going to do, or he had them cleared before I even presented the audit. So that was 9 of the 10. The one that he didn't have was we as the auditor prepared the financial statement. I was the auditor back then, of course. And Jim said that, yeah, we're going to get rid of that comment too. So he hired my firm as the accountants, and then the audit went out for bid, and Aaron's firm was hired as the auditor. So now, not only do you have 0 audit comments, but you have general fund balance unassigned $871,000, but then you also have money set aside. You have $426,000 set aside for capital projects. that's called, it's an assigned fund balance. You have 60,000 set aside to pay your pension. Then you have committed fund balance. You have 1,750,000 committed for a new township hall. And then 150,000 is set aside for emergency use only. The council would have to authorize the use of those funds on top of, well, actually it's via a resolution. And Aaron will get into that a little bit when he goes over the audit. But I just wanna say how well you are doing as a village. That 76,000 in 2014 has grown to 3.2 million fund balance in your general fund. So it's really amazing, and you know, I'm glad to work with you, and I appreciate you allowing me to work with you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
All right, good evening. I am Aaron Stevens with Mayor Harrison. The presentation you see on the screen is a PowerPoint presentation I'd like to go through. I did not duplicate the financial statements in this presentation, but I do have some charts and graphs that'll help highlight a few things that I'd like to touch on. Our thanks to the administration, the staff, and Steve Breyer and his group for their courtesy, cooperation, and assistance. We know we are a disruption to the normal routine, and we appreciate all the help that we receive when we're out in the field. The audit went very smoothly. What I plan to do is highlight what I think are the key areas. If you've got questions, feel free to stop me at any time and we can go through those. I do have a presentation overview or outline just of some general areas that I'd like to cover. We'll talk about a few paragraphs out of the independent auditor's report. We'll briefly discuss the government-wide financial statements. Then I'll get into the fund level financial statements with the highlighting the general fund with some charts and graphs. And then we'll talk again briefly on the enterprise funds, the sewer, the water, and the golf funds. And then we'll look forward to the upcoming accounting pronouncements, what we have to implement or what you have to implement with Steve's help, presumably, over the next few years in the way of accounting standards. So with that, the independent auditor's report is presented on pages 3 through 5 of your bound document. I always like to remind everyone that the purpose or the objective of an audit is to express opinions on the financial statements as to whether or not they're fairly presented. The purpose of an audit is not to detect fraud or give you an opinion on your internal control. And that is because fraud detection, deterrence, prevention, as well as sound internal control are management responsibilities. Now, if we do find fraud, if we detect fraud, if we have recommendations on how to improve your internal control, we certainly have a responsibility to communicate that to you, and that would be done in a written form. It would be done in a report on internal control. But that's a byproduct of the audit itself. The purpose of the audit is to express opinions on the financial statements. And for this audit, this year's audit, there was a new auditing standard that was implemented that rearranged the order of the paragraphs that the independent auditor's report entailed. And so we start with the opinions. These used to be buried on page 2 or 3 of the independent auditor's report. Now they're the first 2 paragraphs. The first paragraph, as you see on the slide, we've performed your audit. The second paragraph, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. That is the important phrase. I've highlighted it there. That is what we refer to as an unmodified opinion. It's a clean opinion. It's the highest level of assurance that we can provide for a set of financial statements. And that's what you want to see as a council, are the unmodified opinions. To put that into some perspective for you, there are 3 types of opinions we could express. You've got what you want to see in the unmodified opinions, but we could have expressed a qualified opinion, and that might read something like, except for capital assets, the financial statements are fairly presented. We could have expressed an adverse opinion where the financial statements are not fairly presented, and then the only other alternative that we have would be to disclaim an opinion altogether. We didn't audit your records, so we couldn't audit your records. So of the options, you've got what you want to see in that unmodified opinion, which is, again, the highest level of assurance that we can provide. In the 5th paragraph on page 3 of the independent auditor's report, we highlight that that management is responsible for the preparation and the fair presentation of the financial statements, and that does include the internal controls over that preparation and presentation. And then on page 4 in the 2nd paragraph, we talk about our responsibilities as your auditors, and that is to express opinions on the financial statements based on our audit, as I said earlier. But I wanted to highlight a few things because this paragraph did get expanded with the new auditing standard. Our objectives are to obtain reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance, about whether the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement and not all misstatement. We don't look at every single transaction. We do make sample selections and test those transactions when we perform an audit. So we're looking for reasonable assurance and whether the financial statements are materially accurate. Your bound report does include two sets of financial statements, one being government-wide financial statements, the other being the fund-level financial statements. Government-wide financial statements are prepared on a full accrual basis of accounting, so they primarily have a long-term perspective, and they're prepared once a year. The only time you see government-wide financial statements are in that audit report. There are two government-wide statements. The first one is the statement of net position, and the second is the statement of activities. In those government-wide statements are broken down into activity types. And so we start with the governmental activities. Again, I didn't duplicate the financial statements, just a couple of highlights here. A couple of metrics that I like to look at, one being the current ratio. And the current ratio is a measure of liquidity, and it asks or answers the question how, can you pay your bills as they come due? So you take your current assets of $4.8 million divided by current liabilities of $631,000. You can cover your current obligations 7.6 times over as of June 30th, which is excellent. You can pay your bills in a timely manner. The other metric that I like to look at is taking the unrestricted net position, again on the full accrual basis of accounting, and comparing it to your expenses on the full accrual basis of accounting. So your unrestricted net position for governmental activities was $2.5 million. Your expenses for this year were just over $2 million. So you could operate for about 15 months before you needed to generate any additional revenue on the full accrual basis, which again is excellent financial position. When we get to the business type activities, so similar metrics here, current assets divided by current liabilities, 3.8. So you can cover your current obligations almost 4 times over with your current financial resources. And then the unrestricted net position compared to expenses, you could operate for just over a year before you needed to generate additional revenue. And again, the business type activities are the same as your enterprise fund. So it's the water, the sewer, and the golf course fund all rolled together. So as a group, you could operate for just over a year. On the statement of activities, this is on page 14 of your bound report. Again, another government-wide statement, a little backwards because we start with expenses and it reads left to right, and then it reads top to bottom. So as you go down the page, the number that I like to look at is that third number from the bottom, which is the change in net position. And for governmental activities, your net position improved by $1,038,000 for this fiscal year, and then the business type activities improved by $382,000. So an excellent year financially for the village. Then we get into the meat and potatoes. I think probably the better part of the presentation, if you will. Governmental fund financial statements are presented on pages 15 and 16. Governmental funds financial statements are presented or prepared on the modified accrual basis of accounting. So a modified accrual basis of accounting has a current financial resources focus. So it's this year's revenue, this year's expenditures, but when you look at the balance sheet, which is on page 15, what you don't see are those long-term items. So what isn't reported on the balance sheet are the capital assets, the long-term debt, the net pension liability. Those are all long-term items that are either depreciated or recognized over time. And this should be a more familiar presentation for you because this is the level at which your budgets are prepared and your interim reporting is done at the fund level throughout the year as well. So as I said, the balance sheet is presented on page 15. And the balance sheet is a snapshot as of June 30th, 2022 of your governmental fund assets, liabilities, deferred inflows of resources, and then the net of those three numbers is your fund balance or your equity. I tend to focus on the general fund as the operating fund for the village. So your total fund balance, and Steve already indicated this earlier, a total fund balance as of June 30th, $3,279,000. That almost $3.3 million is broken down into 5 possible classifications. You only happen to have 4 of those classifications for the general fund. But you see that the classifications in the middle of the slide there, non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. And when I look at the health of a fund balance, especially for a general fund, I look at the unrestricted amount. And unrestricted to me means the assigned and unassigned portions, because you can assign fund balance as you see fit. On the fly, throughout the year, you can make budget amendments and assign fund balance, you can make a budget amendment and unassigned fund balance. So I look at that collectively. And as of June 30th, again, Steve already touched on these numbers here, but you had $426,000 assigned for capital acquisitions, another $60,000 assigned for pension reserve, and then you had unassigned fund balance of $871,575. Comparing that total to your expenditures for the year, which were $2,179,995, that unrestricted fund balance represents 62% of your expenditures for the year. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends that you maintain a minimum fund balance in your general fund that is equal to 2 months of what they call normal operations. So 2 out of 12 months is about 17%. You're sitting at 62, which is excellent. The next slide here, sticking with the general fund theme, total revenues for the year in the general fund, $2.5 million. That was an increase of approximately $290,000 over the previous fiscal year, so about a 13% increase in revenue for the general fund. Total expenditures also increased, so you're about $2.2 million for this fiscal year, which was an increase of about $654,000, which can be tied directly to your capital outlay. Capital projects that were paid for out of the general fund, which would include the DPW building and park improvements primarily. You had some other financing sources, so transfers in of $31,879, and the results for the year, you added to your general fund balance $381,000. For the previous fiscal year, you added $714,000. But probably the most impressive slide in the whole presentation. Here's a 5-year bar graph of your general fund revenues, expenditures, and total fund balance. So as you can see, your revenues have exceeded your expenditures in each of the past 5 years, which leads to an increase in your fund balance in each of the past 5 years. A steady upward trend in your fund balance, and you've earmarked portions of that for specific purposes, and you've really positioned yourself well for getting those projects done without borrowing money, which is excellent. On the next slide, the general fund revenues, the composition of your general fund revenues, taxes at 64%. Those were 67% in 2021. Intergovernmental revenue, which would include any federal, state, local revenue at 24%. It was 26% in the previous year. Relatively consistent from year to year on the composition. A little bit of a shift between those two categories, but otherwise consistent. The expenditure composition for the general fund, as I said, the big change was your capital outlay. In this fiscal year, for the year ended June 30, 2022, it sits at about 32%. It was mixed in with other. Last year was so small, so minuscule that it didn't even make the graph. So that did, having that large percentage in capital outlay did shift some of the other components. So public safety is sitting at 33%. In 2021, it was 46%. Public works at 13%. That was 19% in the previous year. And then general government was at 13% for 2022 and 17% for 2021. So we did see some shifting there. The line graph, the unrestricted fund balance is a percentage of expenditures for the past 5 years. It fluctuates, obviously. So you had a low of 62%, and that was in 2022 was the low point. The high point was at 113% in the previous year, 2021. But that you added to your fund balance. So what happened is you've now earmarked more portions of that unrestricted fund balance, and so the percentage did come down. But still, keep in mind the minimum recommendation is 17%. You far exceeded that in each of the past 5 years. So no concerns that it decreased. You're getting things done. The next slide, same information on the percentage of fund balance, but this is in terms of dollars instead of percentages. So the blue line that you see there is the actual, and then that reddish brown line is 17% of each year's expenditures. So again, just a visual of how far you've exceeded that minimum recommendation. Then the proprietary funds on pages 18 through 21, these are your enterprise funds prepared on the full accrual basis of accounting. So just like the government-wide statements, these would be the same as your business type activities, but it shows you more detail in a slightly different format. So we can look at it at the fund level. And the statement of net position is just like the balance sheet for the governmental funds. It's a snapshot as of June 30th, 2022. In this case, we have assets, deferred outflows of resources, liabilities, deferred inflows of resources, and the net of those four items would be your net position. So like fund balance for the governmental funds, net position for the proprietary funds. So what I have on this slide, unrestricted net position for the sewer fund is about $1.9 million, and that represents approximately 349% of your operating expenses. For purposes of that calculation, I did subtract out the depreciation expense because it's a non-cash item. That same metric for the water fund, $590,000 in unrestricted net position represented 143% of operating expenses. And then for the golf course fund, $442,000 of unrestricted net position gives you an unrestricted net position of 38% of your operating expenses less depreciation. So again, stable, healthy, but probably a picture's worth 1,000 words. This tells the story better here. For the sewer fund, 5-year trend of your total net position, but it is broken down into the 3 categories. So you've got the amount that's unrestricted, that's what you have available for use is the green portion of that bar, the upper portion. And then you do have some amounts that are restricted for bond covenants and so forth. And then the blue portion represents the amount you have invested in your capital assets, in your sewer system, for example. You can't spend that. You can't spend your sewer system. So it's really not available for future use. It's not available for operations. It would be like, selling the car to buy gas. You can't, you're not going to do that. So what you have available is that green portion. But that has grown from, over the course of the 5-year period, but especially from 2021 of 1.5 million to about 1.9 million in 2022. And on the next slide, we show you the 5-year trend of that unrestricted net position compared to your operating expenses. Healthy, steady upward trend for the sewer fund. So good shape there. The water fund, similar bar graph here, 5-year trend, unrestricted net position went from 700,000 in 2021. It dropped to about 591,000 in 2022. But what you did do, if you take a look at the blue portion of the bar, you invested in your systems, in your water system. So you do have more invested in capital assets net of related debt. So total net position increased, but the unrestricted portion did decrease because you made investments to the capital, to the infrastructure. And then the line graph here, the 5-year trend of unrestricted net position as a percentage of operating expenses. It leveled off, really. It slightly increased from 2021 to 2022. But again, it's stabilized now and in a good position. And then finally, the graphs for the golf course fund. This is the feel-good story, right, for the village. In 2018, you were in a negative or a deficit position for unrestricted net position was a negative 166,000. It is now a positive $442,000. So not only did total net position increase, but the unrestricted portion increased as well from 2021 to 2022. On the line graph, this one, the percentage did dip a little bit, but that's because your operating expenses increased slightly. So, and I think it decreased a percentage, so it wasn't much of a decrease. Again, it leveled off. And then because the village expended $750,000 or more of federal awards, you were required to have an audit performed in accordance with uniform guidance or a single audit. So with that comes a requirement for additional schedules. It's really additional planning, additional testing, additional reporting. So I'd like to touch briefly on its schedules. Schedule of expenditures of federal awards, or the CEFA, is arranged by assistance listing number. We selected the USDA Water and Waste Disposal Systems for Rural Communities program. So it's the CFDA, or the assistance listing number, is 10.760. We were required to test 40% of your federal expenditures This single program gave us 99.9% of their federal expenditures. So we got plenty of coverage with this one program. The schedule of findings and question costs is the other required schedule when you have a single audit performed. This is presented on page 64 of your bound report. It is broken down into the 3 categories that you see listed on the slide. And I did include this, I broke it up into a couple slides, but I did include this schedule as a screenshot because I think it's pretty impressive to look at. So on the next slide, this is section 1. I know it's kind of small. But we talked about, at the beginning of the presentation, we talked about the fact that you had unmodified opinions on your financial statements. So that's listed there. No material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, no non-compliance related to the financial statements. So we didn't have any financial statement findings. When we get to the federal awards portion of the audit and the summary here, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, an unmodified opinion, compliance with major federal program requirements, no other audit findings to be required to be disclosed or included here, reported here. It doesn't get any cleaner than that. That's an excellent report. We didn't have any audit findings. On the next slide, the rest of section 1, we do identify the major federal program. As I said, it was the water and waste disposal system for rural communities program. You could not qualify as a low-risk auditee because you have not had 2 consecutive single audits without findings. This is your second consecutive single audit without findings. So next year, if you had a single audit requirement, you would be considered a low-risk auditee. If we had any findings, they would be detailed out in sections 2 and 3. But as you can see there, none noted. So, upcoming accounting pronouncement on page 40, we have note 18. The upcoming accounting pronouncement disclosed in the notes to your financial statements is GASB statement number 96, which is on subscription-based information technology arrangements, which is a long way of saying the leasing of software. Steve's here to help you with that next year, the year that you're in now. To the extent that you have those, you would have to recognize the right to use that software and then the corresponding lease payable on the face of the statement of net position. An operating lease currently is just expensed as you go, so it doesn't show up on the statement of net position. It will starting with the year that you're in now. So I went through that fairly quickly, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I do have my copy of the report, so if you got a specific question, happy to address those.
Just a quick question about the new standards coming in these following years in regards to lease equipment. Why is that of a consideration to look at? What prompts the changes in the audit rules?
What prompts it is the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, which is the standard-setting body for the accounting rules that we have to follow. So as far as equipment goes, that was implemented for this fiscal year, for the year ended June 30th, 2022, the one we just audited. But the very first question we ask when we implement any accounting standard is it material to your financial statements? If it's not material, we're done. We don't we don't have to implement it. So we did an evaluation, I think, together. Steve did it first and then ran a few questions past me. And so it didn't have much of an impact on your financial statements which was GASB 87 on tangible assets. GASB 96 is on the software, subscription-based information technology arrangements. But if it's not material, we don't spend time on it.
Sure.
Aaron, thanks. Trustee Holmes, a couple questions for you. First, as it relates to the total debt to total asset ratio, you mentioned it's 3.8%. I'm just curious, how does that compare with other villages our size? I'm trying to get a perspective on what we own and what we owe as it relates to that ratio.
I don't have all of that memorized, certainly for other municipalities, but I would say you have relatively low debt for a village your size. But what you've done is you set yourself up for success because you've now saved for projects that you want to do in the future. So it'll limit or eliminate the need to borrow, which is awesome.
And that's what I was assuming. I just wanted to hear it from you. And I guess following that train of thought, overall, when you look at the audit, you've been doing this for a number of years, how do we compare with other villages similar to us? Are you seeing similar results with them or not?
You are very strong financially. I'm not gonna say all of my clients are not financially strong, but you have a process in place that works for you. And you're doing very, very well, especially for a municipality your size.
And what percentile would you put us in?
Oh, I love Vicksburg. Percentile?
Give me the percentile. Are we in the top half, the top quarter? Are we in the top 5%? What do you think when you look at your audit? How would you rank us?
In terms of financial health?
Yes.
You're in the top 5%. Absolutely.
One last question, and that is as it relates to the sewer and water fund. You and I had a nice discussion when we first looked at this last Thursday, and I appreciate your comments to it, because my comment was, I think it's easy for someone to look at both of those funds and realize with the water fund, we have, a little under 600,000 unrestricted, uncommitted. The sewer fund, we have, 1.9 million unrestricted, uncommitted, and you rightfully so reminded me that we have a $9 million sewer business that we're investing in, and also a $4 million, water business. And so I'm just curious, Jim, if I could ask you a question, if it's
Yeah.
appropriate. As it relates to that, can you share with us thoughts, ideas, as it relates to that, those monies that are unrestricted, uncommitted, what you see on the horizon? Where do you see that we're going to be focusing on in the next 18, 24 months?
Yeah, specific to the sewer fund, to emphasize, this is a look as of June 30th of 2022. So where that balance was 1.9 million, the balance currently is at about 1.6 because some of that project continued after June. We also know that we have a retainage fee that we've kept back because the project isn't complete with the part on the Washington Street lift station. That's in excess of $250,000. That'll come down off that 1.6, so now you're at about 1.35, as well as, I believe the last bill will probably be 6 figures in that project once they complete what they're required to complete. So in next year's audit, that will be substantially less and probably closer to the $1 million mark. It'll be less than that, in fact, because we've had an increase of our treatment cost with the city of Kalamazoo at 20% increase. And we utilize financial means to not transfer that 20% increase to our users. So that balance will be down in the next audit. I know it'll be down 100%. I'm 100% confident it will be down. It will not be down. I forgot I'm in a room full of accountants now, so, if that helps, so.
That's great, Jim. Thanks, I appreciate it. No other questions, thanks.
Any other questions for Aaron? Well, I appreciate your coming here and presenting to us and the long hours you've put in with all of us. We've each independently had an opportunity to meet with you prior to this meeting, so that was very, very helpful. So the lack of questions aren't due to the lack of previously asking them of you, so I appreciate that. So with that, we'll let Aaron have a seat for a moment, and we'll continue on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So as I said earlier, we all had an opportunity to sit down with them independently to discuss and ask a lot of questions and dive deep into it. So we've been through it, and we've had an opportunity to discuss. And I just wanted to bring some of the other questions to the forefront. I appreciate that, Rick. Thank you. But we have an action item in front of us to approve the 2021 and 2022 audit report.
President Frisbee, I make a motion that we accept the audit as presented, both by Aaron Stevens and Steve Breyer to the village council this evening.
Trustee Fields, I support.
We'll do a roll call, please, Christian.
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
trustee Olson,
Yes.
trustee Reister,
Yes.
trustee Fields,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you very much. So we're going to jump right into to the village manager report. He's got a presentation of the historic financial commitments and assignments.
Well, I thought we'd utilize the time of the work session. I know if Aaron and Steve are rather busy, if we can go ahead and excuse them since questions and time out. I definitely appreciate all the assistance and help and direction they provide. But
It's been a blessing to work with Aaron Stevens and Steve Ryer for sure, and I appreciate the dedication by both of you. And it's a much friendlier conversation when things are going well, right? So we appreciate all the work. Thank you.
thanks, sir.
Thanks, Paul.
I thought just to take a couple minutes and have not so much a presentation, but a conversation of what's led up to this point in the village of Vicksburg in the next couple of years as we move to our 7 o'clock meeting. We have some actions with additional commitments and assignments. But I always am reminded, and it sits on my desk, the following quote: "Oversight and governance of financial affairs is amongst the most important of responsibilities of village officials. Inadequate oversight can lead to abuses such as embezzlement, misuse of and/or misappropriation of funds, and general loss of esteem for the municipality and its officials. Excessive control or oversight can render your village ineffective and incapable of delivering important services." And that's a quote that is in the General Law Village Officials Handbook from the Michigan Municipal League. We feel it's important that the village council members have some information from our past 6 audits and an understanding of some of the recommendations from staff which have been supported and or adopted by previous village councils. It is in that vein that we will be providing a summary which includes a timeline for each fiscal year with agenda items of significance that have been presented to the council for their support and or adoption in the past. The items of significance were ones in which would demonstrate a positive impact on the culture of our municipality, as well as positively impacting our ability to effectively manage the village operations. To be more succinct, it was those decisions by previous village councils that has put this village in position today. Decisions that were not hard, but at times difficult due to the impact it had on historical culture. We've presented to previous village councils about the lack of developed plans within the village of Vicksburg. Those included plans that were absence of capital needs and or fiscal responsibility. It has been a core and central point to our mission to develop, implement, and then execute appropriate plans for a municipality our size. From my perspective, the yearly budgets are the most important plan that we present to each village council. I feel the results of the auditor are an evaluation of the performance of those plans. These plans have been ever developing and fluid over the past 6 years. Throughout this time period, I've talked about a journey that we are on together. A journey By together, I mean not only the village council with your foresight and leadership, village staff, but arguably most importantly, the citizens we serve. A journey in which we are all committed to becoming the model municipality of our size. Our mutual expectation to become the model village in our nation. It's an expectation that I feel the last 6 years would demonstrate is definitely within reach. I believe in my heart that the results of the past 6 audits indicates 2 important facts. First, that the village of Vicksburg is well on its way to becoming a model municipality. And second, our work has just begun, as this is a marathon journey we are on. The last fiscal year budget was the 6th fiscal year that we had presented to the village council for adoption. We're proud of the results of this audit, which were presented by Aaron Stevens tonight. I'm proud of the team that we've assembled and their performance, pride, and passion that they display on a daily basis. Their commitment to making the village of Vicksburg a model municipality is evident and unmatched in my professional career. At our regular village council meeting tonight, I'll present to this council the detailed recommendations of our next steps in the journey that we are on in the service to our citizens. We'll present to the village council our recommendations for commitments and assignments of monies that I will highlight at the 7 o'clock meeting. We'll also provide a very short review of the different streams of revenue that the village receives. We'll highlight a few examples of how we've been able to accomplish the auditing results that were presented tonight. And of most importance, our advice to this council on how we'll continue an upward trajectory in a progressive manner over the next 5 to 8 years. We've acknowledged in the past that we need to step up our communication game. It is our sincere hope that you and the public we serve recognize our efforts in this area during the calendar year 2023. We've taken information from a strategic planning session 2 days ago and have already began implementing steps that will improve communication with the citizens we serve. We will be going into detail at the February 6th and February 20th of the implementations that began this morning in those areas. It'll be our expectation that we register with citizens' consent their email addresses within our system, and that we're able to deliver, at minimum, monthly newsletters to every citizen that lives in the village of Vicksburg in the calendar year 2023. We'll have other significant communication announcements that we'll be utilizing Zoom webinar platforms, as well as soliciting citizens' opinions on how best to invest their tax dollars during our 2023-2024 fiscal year budget preparation. I say it every January during the 3rd meeting of the month. It is a significant night for our municipality. It completes the past 3 years that the village of Vicksburg has streamed our governmental meetings. Right now, we run our governmental meetings live on YouTube that are archived on YouTube for anyone to see going back to January of 2020. We also coincide it with a Zoom meeting that would allow citizens to call in a hybrid fashion, or most importantly, we'd wish citizens to participate in person. This is of significance. You can draw a radius around the village of Vicksburg in whatever mile circumference you choose. There are very few, less than 5% of municipalities our size, with creating transparency to the citizens they serve whether it is in the manners that I've just stated on YouTube, Zoom, in person, or our financial transparency section of our own website. I'm going to go into detail at our 7 o'clock meeting specific to the commitments of money for the Village of Vicksburg that staff is recommending the council to approve. It will be in the area of continuing a tax stabilization fund, as well as saving money for a new municipal building. We'll also detail assignments of money for capital needs for DPW, our pension investments, police, village hall equipment, technology. And then areas that impact our citizens greatly, parks and recreation, as well as upgrading parking lots and future plans for park investments specific to serving kids under 12 years old in a multi-layered park setting. There are 8 revenue streams that money flows into village government. General fund, which are our property taxes, major street fund, local street fund, downtown development tax money, brownfield fund, Angels Crossing Golf Course, sewer fund, and our water fund. We operate in a manner that lawfully identifies which stream of money we can use and attempt to use all revenue streams that we can prior to utilizing general fund tax revenues. This is to ensure that we can create a culture that does not anticipate or need to raise our millage rate to operate government. We have examples of the past where this strategy has worked. We invested close to $450,000 for our DPW facility that was just completed a few months ago. People will see the results of the building with a new fence alongside of it and might not understand that with the village council's leadership, money was saved for 4 years prior to completing that need. We operate our fiscal year budget preparation under a simplistic needs, wants, and wishes. So 4 years ago, that was a wish to be able to construct a DPW building. In an analyzation of the money available to do such, we had to categorize it as a wish. There were too many priorities above it. About 2 years ago, it moved to a want as we continued an overall analyzing what was the needs to serve our citizens in the best manner we could. When appropriate, and we knew we had the cash on hand, we went through an appropriate bid procedure and again accomplished this without placing any debt on our citizens. It's one example among many, whether it's the purchase of patrol vehicles for our police department, pickups, plow trucks, crane trucks, vac trucks, other like equipment for our DPW, to the smallest of needs, which you'll see by our February meetings of dedicated laptop computers for the technology to transmit our meetings in a more efficient way via the platforms we use on social media, etc. All done with cash, majority of time, not in the fiscal year budget due to the fact that we've taken time to save. Outside accountants have confirmed tonight that this is not typical of municipalities our size. We should all be proud of how we are operating our government and resolute in our commitment to continue this journey. We're reminded on a weekly basis when we look at national news of citizens' mistrust of government. This mistrust of government is at all levels, federal, state, and even local government. We need to understand and accept this, do our very best to overly communicate our intentions, actions, and results. I can speak on behalf of the entire staff that we will remain committed and steadfast in that commitment to transparency, communication, and execution of policy. I'm happy to answer any questions now about the audit or other matters at this time, and then we'll go into more detail at the 7 o'clock meeting.
Any questions of staff? No. Thank you, Jim. Oh, so we'll just move on to trustees' time. I think we have about 8 minutes before our next meeting, so I'll start with Mr. Olson, trustee Olson,
Nothing at this time.
trustee Reister.
I would like to, again, thank Aaron and Steve because they presented both tonight and at the meetings that we had with them earlier, understandable material. And I really appreciate that because this is not one of my areas of expertise. So I appreciate the work that they did and their ability to give the information to me so that I could understand it. So thank you very much.
Trustee Fields,
Nothing at this time.
trustee Holmes,
Nothing now, thanks.
trustee Keller.
I'm good, thanks.
I just want to take a real quick moment, Michelle Morgan, if you're watching and listening, thank you very much. Jim as well, thanks for your dedication and what you've done financially for this community. Yeah, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
I support.
Recording
And call this order to meeting. Is- the- So Village Council regular session, Monday, January 16, 2023. And if you join me, sing the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just, if we take a moment of silence here. And Mr. Christian Wines, if you would, please take a roll call.
Trustee Reister,
Here.
Trustee Holmes,
Here.
Trustee Olson,
Here.
Trustee Fields,
Here.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Here.
President Frisbee.
Yeah, here. And as I said earlier, Trustee Wagner is excused. We have an agenda in front of us. Jim, was there any changes or additions?
No, sir.
Does the council have any additions they'd like to make? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by President Pro Tem Keller and seconded by Trustee Reister. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We have an agenda in front of us. Jim, was there anybody online, any public officials scheduled to appear tonight?
No, sir, and no one's on Zoom, and YouTube has 2 individuals.
All right, we'll move on to citizens' comments for agenda items only. This is the time, if you have a comment on the agenda in front of us tonight, to step forward and speak. Seeing none, we'll move on. We have a consent agenda. Some from our minutes of our regular council meeting on December 19th. We have warrant reports total $226,234.41, and we have no event requests or correspondence. Is there any additions, corrections to the minutes from our December 19th meeting? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve the general consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Trustee Fields, Trustee Reister, seconded by Trustee Fields. Would you do a roll call, Christian?
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
Trustee Fields,
Yes.
Trustee Olson,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
Trustee Reister,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. So our item 9, we have village council action items tonight, and the first one on our list is a resolution 01162023-1, a resolution committing and/or assigning fund balances in according with GASB statement number 54. Staff is recommending a motion to support and approval of resolution.
Yeah, if you're comfortable with it, President Frisbee, I'll
Please.
go ahead and read Resolution 0116-2023-1. It's a resolution committing and/or assigning fund balances in accordance with GASB Statement Number 54. Whereas in accordance with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, GASB, Statement Number 54, Fund Balance Reporting and Governmental Fund Type Definitions, and whereas fund balance classifications depict the nature of the net resources that are reported in a governmental fund, an individual governmental fund may include non-spendable resources and amounts that are restricted, committed, or assigned, or any combination of those classifications. The general fund may also include an unassigned amount. And whereas the fund balances are to be reported in governmental funds under the following categories using the definitions provided by GASB Statement Number 54. Non-spendable fund balance. Definition includes amounts that cannot be spent because they are either A, not in spendable form, or B, legally or contractually required to be maintained intact. Example, long-term accounts receivable and prepaid expense. Classification non-spendable amounts will be determined before all other classifications and consist of the following items. The village will report a fund balance equal to the balance of any long-term outstanding balances due from others, including other funds of the village. The village will report a fund balance equal to the value of inventory balances and prepaid items to the extent that such balances are not offset with liabilities and actually result in a fund balance. The village will report a fund balance equal to the corpus or principal of any permanent funds that are legally or contractually required to be maintained intact. The village will report a fund balance equal to the balance of any land or other non-financial assets held for sale. Restricted fund balance definition includes amounts that can be spent only for specific purposes stipulated by the Constitution, external resource providers, or through enabling legislation. Committed fund balance definition includes amounts that can be used only for the specific purpose determined by a formal action of the Village of Vicksburg Council by means of resolution. Authority to commit. Commitments will only be used for the specific purposes pursuant to a formal action of the council. A majority vote is required to approve a commitment, and a majority vote is required to remove a commitment. Assigned fund balance, the definition includes amounts intended to be used by the village for specific purposes, but does not meet the criteria to be classified as restricted or committed, determined by a formal action of the Village of Vicksburg Council by means of motion. In governmental funds or other than the general fund, assigned fund balance represents a remaining amount that is not restricted or committed. Authority to assign. Assignments will only be used for specific purposes pursuant to a formal action of the council. A majority vote is required to approve an assignment, and a majority vote is required to remove an assignment. Unassigned fund balance, the definition, includes the residual classification for the village general fund and includes all spendable amounts not contained in the other classifications. In other funds, the unassigned classification should be used only to report a deficit balance from overspending for specific purposes for which amounts had been restricted, committed, or assigned. The unassigned fund balance will be 25% at minimum, and as the auditors indicated at the 6 p.m. meeting, it is recommended a minimum is 17%. The resolution continues, whereas the Village of Vicksburg deems it appropriate to commit the following amounts to the committed fund balance categories. 101 Fund, Tax Stabilization Fund in the amount of $150,000. The Tax Stabilization Fund will account for funds set aside for the sole purposes of establishing a fund in which the monies are a contingency, and the Tax Stabilization Reserve Fund may only be used when the unrestricted deficit condition that would formulate a deficit elimination plan under the Glen-Steele State Revenue Sharing Act of 1971, Public Act 140 of 1971, Section 21, Subsection 2. The 101-900-975-051 municipal building carryover for building outlay in the amount of $2 million. The Vicksburg Village Hall is not ADA compliant and needs to be replaced with a modern facility. This building was built in the 1950s as a doctor's office and is inadequate for the needs of municipal building in 2022. Our plan is to have an amount saved over the next, and when I say next 2 fiscal years, the current fiscal year we're in and the 23-24 fiscal year, that will enable the village to begin construction in the fiscal year we're currently in. Whereas the village deems it appropriate to assign the following amounts to an assigned fund balance categories. This will add to the assignment balances of each category. The following items would be basically our money we're saving for capital improvement needs. 204-441-977-0 11, defined benefit pension reserve in the amount of $65,000. 204-441-977-011, DPW capital outlay vehicle, $85,500. 204-441-977-011, DPW capital outlay heavy equipment, $65,000. 204-441-977-011, DPW capital outlay crane truck, $10,000. 204-441-977-011, DPW capital outlay Bobcat, $15,000. 204-441-977-011, DPW capital outlay pickup truck, $25,000. 101-900-977-086, police capital outlay patrol vehicle, $47,500. 101-900-977-080, police capital outlay weapon systems, $10,000. 101-900-977-083, police capital outlay for communications and radios, $10,500. 101-900-977-000, village hall capital outlay equipment, $55,967. 101-900-977-000, park and rec, $82,000. 101-900-975-000, large parking lot, $64,000, which would have a total January of 2023 amount of $535,467 that are assigned. Resolution concludes, therefore, it now be resolved at the Village of Vicksburg's council regular meeting as of January 16th, 2023, assign and/or commit the funds as outlined in this resolution. It would then take, I will explain, I believe the council certainly aware, but for others in earshot, the amounts that were listed off in committed and assigned is simply putting that money in what would be described in our personal lives as a savings account for when it needs to be spent. That does not mean those items are going to be expensed in this, in fact, they won't be expensed in this fiscal year, but we continue to, so as an example, I'll just pause there. I just wanted to make sure that it's to set money aside in a savings account, so.
Yes, sir.
Jim, real quick, and maybe I'm off a little bit. The defined benefit pension reserve, that's listed as the same assigned fund balance category as all the other DPWs. Is that correct, or was that a typo?
Yeah, that, it would not be in that code, though. I don't want to get too into the weeds. We do an activity level fund budget, so it would be in a 101 fund or a 204 fund. Both of those are general fund categories at the activity level.
No,
But that specific 977-011 will not be, but it will be listed off in a 101 or 204 category.
No, I understand, just that, because all the DPW stuff is under the same header.
Because they're, the 900, I list those off in the resolution, so staff, when we input them, but really the resolution could just list the first three numbers.
No.
It's not anything, I hear what you're saying, it shouldn't list the 9, but it doesn't impact where that money's gonna be or that.
That's fine, I just want to make sure it wasn't a typo or anything, that's all, because I saw that the DPW, the plow truck, heavy equipment, crane truck, Bobcat, pickup, they're all, the suffix was all 011. They're all 011, which is fine.
Again, there's too many numbers on there, none of them will hit the 011.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just have a couple of questions about the weapon systems and also the large parking lot. Is that the one behind the buildings on, you're talking about the parking lot behind all the buildings on Main Street?
The hardware, distant whistle, and
yeah,
that, yeah, that's where we've
Okay.
identified
And,
it.
and what's the weapons systems? What is that?
If a new handgun was
Oh.
needed to be purchased, one of them breaks,
Okay. I just thought maybe it was some kind
it
of.
could go into that category, it could be any of the weapon, taser,
Okay,
any of their force continuum weapons.
thank you.
Jim, love it. Love the detail. You know me, it's all about the detail. A couple questions for you. One is, for those of us that have been through the audit and we've seen the data, obviously, we're currently sitting at 62% unassigned fund balance, and then we're looking at the adjustment in the presentation, the information you've given to 25%. So obviously, we're looking at committing, and we've been that way for a while, so we've been good stewards of the money. Is that a fair way of looking at it? And so
Yes.
now we're at a point where we're looking at doing, as the list is that you provided it, we're looking at committing some of those monies towards capital outlays, future outlays, so that we can get to where we want to be, whether it's 1 year or 5 years out as it relates to the budget, correct?
Correct. We're looking at the capital needs that we can identify within the village. In our more detailed spreadsheets internally, I've created the anticipated fiscal year that a new crane truck would be needed. We know on today's dollars, that's $110,000. So, and we also know that that is a 20-year lifespan. So in 2038, we can predict that the village will need a new crane truck. So by 2038, they will have the cash that they don't have to dip into that fiscal year. On a shorter side, we have in this current fiscal year a pickup truck for DPW. DPW needs 3 pickup trucks, staggered them out 5 years apart, so the village will be purchasing a new pickup truck every 5 years. So the oldest one will have a new one, a 5-year-old one, a 10-year-old one. Eventually, the newest one will be 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years before we get a new one, if that helps. And for the other, I think, importance of the resolution is the definitions of the commitment. So commitments is specific to Village Hall and a tax stabilization fund. The next level down is the assignment level. So if something were to occur, the money within that $535,000 could come in front of the council, and if we lost a plow truck this winter and need a substantial money investment in a plow truck, we would be looking at these saved funds, not our current fiscal year, to identify that need to purchase with cash. And there's a lot more flexibility in the assignments versus the commitment.
And I appreciate the further explanation of it, because I think it's really important for us, as well as the residents, to understand to the level in which we're budgeting
Yeah.
for current and future needs.
I apologize for interrupting you, but I think I'm on because the other item that is, that 25% is an additional $600,000 that we have as of June 30th. Now, our staff internal, I'm every month balancing also expenses under revenues of our current fiscal year. I think the total governmental activities village-wide on the audit presentation was $1 million in last fiscal year. And about between 350 and 400,000 just to the general fund. So we know we're actually going to be expenses in the general fund less than we were the previous fiscal year. So it's pretty fluid each month. We know how much money this village has to utilize in any needs that could be a crisis, if you will.
Gives us more options.
Very much. All of you know I like talking about this subject. I've tried to, when I started for the village, we looked at purchasing a $1,500 computer and weren't sure should we actually purchase that laptop or not. Now we're talking, you know, we could purchase a village hall for cash money and be truly one of the only municipalities to pay for cash on that type of a purchase. So that's how far we've come in 6 years.
It's impressive. I got a couple more things, Trustee Keller. I think it's fair pointing out also that as it relates to unassigned fund balances, that as the auditor has told us, minimal 17%, as you have here, and obviously at the 25% that you're recommending, I mean, we're well above that. Two other quick questions for you. One is tax stabilization fund. Can you explain that to those of us that are unclear on exactly what does that mean to the citizens to have something like that?
If the economy of uncertainty in our next year to 18 months, we have a dip in economy, it is money set aside. Now, the village, it wouldn't be 1 year out. You would have to, all the money the village has saved is at about 143%. So about 2 years worth of expenditures, maybe even into the third year. If the village receives zero income, we'd be able to survive 2.5 to 3 years right now on what we have saved. So, and if we are prudent in the manner that we save and invest the money, we will only get in better shape.
So it's our rainy day fund is a good way of looking at it.
Yes, and it could rain to the point we're building an ark and we'll be okay.
Last question for you, as it relates to the municipal building, Village Hall, and that is that previous councils for the last 5 years, we've set aside money in the capital budget to the tune of $1,750. The request here is building outlay of $2 million. So there's an additional $250,000. And I take it that's built into the 22-23 budget where we're looking at that additional $250,000 to increase that amount from 1.7 to 2 million. Is that accurate?
I might have misheard the fiscal year, but remember, we're only talking about money at the point June 30th of 2022. So of the money we saved in the 2021-2022 fiscal year, we're saying that we can take $250,000 of money in the general fund we saved that one fiscal year and add it to the already 1.75 million that we previously saved over the 5 previous years. So you could look at it that come June 30th, with this approval, as of June 30th of 2022, the village has saved $2 million for a new municipal facility.
Okay. I guess where I'm at is that maybe I missed the counting of the years because I believe the previous council before I joined passed the motion to do this, and so they voted that year to set aside funds. The last 4 years of Carl's and my, I guess a good way of looking at it, we approved it, so there's 5 years. That's the budget I thought we were talking about here, but you're saying that there's that sixth year that was baked into it. I guess I'm trying to understand is, because of the cost of the building went up, so we're looking at additional funds, or has this money already been approved?
The 1.75 million has already been committed.
Right, I understand
We're,
that.
we're looking at, from the 21-22 fiscal year, to add an additional $250,000 to that specific silo of money for a new municipal facility.
Gotcha, okay. So it's 6 years if I was to look at it.
Yeah, because it always hasn't been 250,000. I'm going by memory, but I think we started with $500,000 the first year, so.
Right. No, I don't have any issue with it.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure it's clear where how the funds are being, how the pathway to where we got to is clear.
Yeah, on round numbers, the let's just say 400,000 of general fund money that we saved in 21-22, we're saying it's our recommendation to put 250,000 of that towards the savings of a new municipal building.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
President Presby. I just want to make a statement that, we went through the work session with the audit presentation and now with this resolution coming in front of us, and just, this demonstrates what at least we've been a part of for the last 4+ years, with staff, with Jim, that this has been a lot of hard work. It's being true to what we're doing, mainly staff. I mean, we can take credit for it. We do the votes, but really this is the vision of Jim and the staff that put us in this position. And, the citizens need to understand the fact that we're gonna pay cash for a new village hall, hopefully within the next year or so. That's huge. Other entities, other boards that we're on aren't doing this. I'm not gonna go into big details, but they're not doing this. We're setting money aside for future needs, for equipment, and that's huge. So just, I know a lot of us understand that, but I also want to publicly tell Jim and the staff that I'm extremely happy with what we're doing, so.
What I like about it puts into writing what we've been doing for the last 6 years, right? So we made commitments, we put in definitions, and what I appreciate about this is you have the non-spendable funding balance, the restricted funds, the committed, and you've got the definitions under it. So one is it's a voter resolution in support of what we're doing. 2, it gives us the knowledge of what we're supporting from a definition standpoint, which is good. And then you put it into writing. We've been doing this on resolution votes, but to lay them all out like this is appreciated too. It gives us all a good vision of what the end game is. Any other questions of Jim?
President Frisbee, I apologize, but I just wanted to add, I thought it's fair to add at this point that the auditors were asked, what other municipalities are doing this out there? What other villages are doing this out there? And we're ranked as exceptional. We're ranked in the top percentile. So what the village manager and staff and team are doing, what this council is doing is exceptional. And I think it's fair to say that because as an old saying is true, it's not bragging if it's true. And I think it's fair to congratulate everybody to continue to see the success we're having with our financials.
Any other comments, questions? Well, we have the resolution in front of us. What is the desire of this council?
President Frisbee, I move that we approve Resolution 011-62023-1. It's a resolution committing and/or assigning fund balances in accordance with Gatsby Statement Number 54.
Trustee Reister, support.
Motion by President Pro Tem Keller, seconded by Trustee Reister. We'll do a roll call, please. Christian?
Trustee Reister,
Yes.
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
Trustee Fields,
Yes.
Trustee Olson,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. Resolution carries. So we have in front of us also, it's a MOU. I typically is a letter of understanding, was a memorandum of understanding amendment to the collective bargaining agreement, the MOU. MOU is attached for all, we've reviewed it. Staff is recommending a motion in support of the final approval of the MOU. Extension to the CBA until December 31, 2026. The Vicksburg police officers have ratified the vote. If you, any more detail on that, Jimmy, you'd like to go into?
We went into closed session, last meeting and then came out of closed session, and you authorized, myself to complete, if you will, the negotiations with the, police officers. So presented, their representative with that offer, and they've taken it to, their officers have voted in support of it, and we need to just close that loop with a formal, with the details, and can discuss the details in open. I think some highlights. One, I'd start with the commitment of the team we have there, led by Chief Sanderson and the 5 officers, and their performance, and especially in the outreach and service to the community. But, and I always go back, Denny will remember, I know, our Trustee Olson, back now 7 years ago or whatever. I mean, the police department didn't do a lot of communicating with anyone, including trustees or village manager, and it's really progressed a long way that I'm proud of. So highlights specific to this contract extension is it's 4 years. We all know that the rates of inflation in that, but it looked specifically with goals in mind that would attract new officers in a competitive pay range with municipalities our size, keep and retain those officers, providing them with a competitive wage and benefit package, as well as, so we have continued, our police officers receive a defined benefit retirement, which is very positive for a municipality our size. It's 98% funded, with a plan to get that to 100. So I'm proud. It was very professional, and I appreciate Darren Stanfeld, who represented the officers, and his honest feedback and advocation for his staff. See there, over the course of 4 years, is 12.5% over the course of the 4 years, with raises each of those years. But so yeah, be happy to answer any questions.
I think we, yes, sir.
I
go
got a
right
quick
ahead.
one. Jim, remind me, how many part-time officers do we have?
Currently, we have one,
Just one?
just one right now. We do have postings, as we'd like to add another one. I have asked the chief to analyze as we go into the next fiscal year budget of what only having one part-time officer, our overtime liabilities versus potentially an additional staffing. But till that data is put to me, we're looking into it. It's just very hard to find police officers right now.
Well, Jim, thank you. Your 25 years as a professional law enforcement officer certainly helped us to get to this goal, which is recruiting and keeping the best police force possible. So you have the request. It was good news to see the officers come out and accept, and it just takes this next step for us to get it ratified and approval of the executive summary. What is this council's desires? I can't make a motion.
It's a little unclear what the motion is here, but I'll give it my best effort. I make a motion that we approve the memo of understanding as presented.
I'll second.
Motion made by trustee Holmes, seconded by trustee Fields. We'll do a roll call, please. Christian?
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
trustee Fields,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
trustee Olson,
Yes.
trustee Reister,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. Motion carries again. Thank you, Jim. Item C is entering into a contract with Prine and Newhoff. I'll let Jim elaborate on this.
Yeah, this goes into our commitment to continue to look at every funding source possible for the replacement of our lead line within the village. The state of Michigan, the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, listed off, this goes back to about September, October timeframe, that they would be utilizing state funds for different projects, opened those up to municipalities. We submitted, I think it was titled a pre-application, but we submitted notice that we intended to seek funding through that program, which was the first step to be eligible. We made it through that step, and now it's developing a project plan. So specific to the action tonight is to approve the village manager to enter into an agreement with Prine Newhoff that will not exceed $25,000 to develop that project plan. We are specifically looking at the area bordered Kalamazoo, Washington, Michigan, down to Highway Street. So Michigan, Maine, and Kalamazoo, we know those water mains and the line services into residential homes are predominantly at a high percentage, would fall under the requirement to replace lead lines. It's about $4 million at a high altitude estimate. So this plan will be all the engineering behind it so we can meet that requirement, as the deadline is June 1st of 2023 to submit those plans and requests to the state of Michigan, and then usher that request through in hopes of obtaining a good percentage of funding from the state for that project. So specific tonight is to authorize Prine Newhoff to develop that plan. I will say if we weren't a recipient of those dollars, the plan will be good whatever way we find out to fund it, because we'll be dealing with the same water mains, same lead line services in that area, and then we would look at other funding sources as we go. So the investment is certainly to be able to put us into a position to submit by the June 1st deadline. But if in the long run we did not get funding from the state, the plan would be needed in any funding mechanism we use.
How much money is available through the state if we were to get it?
It was in the hundreds of millions of dollars, but it's for in every municipality. My prediction is they'll be submitting plans for this.
Thank you.
Jim, just curious, is there any money in the Inflationary Act, the Federal Inflationary Act for state municipalities?
I haven't, by memory, received anything to that. I can follow up with you, though.
Yeah,
I'm
just,
sure.
it's just, just a thought it came to me, didn't put, sorry for putting you on the spot, but
No.
just, just a side comment or question. I know that the council has approved funds for a new well. I'm just curious, as it relates to this, is there any updates, or is there any commentary you can give to that? I haven't heard anything.
Well, has been placed on kind of a hold. We did put a temporary well in, and we've tested other areas, because we're gonna look at another, I'm gonna use the words water table, is that my word, or water source, potentially to set that third well. We're about 77% of capacity, and once we hit 80, we'd have 5 years to submit a plan to the state. And so we're out ahead of that curve a bit, but that it's not actively being worked on. Really, lead lines has jumped ahead of everything.
Is this Drinking Water State Revolving Fund a recent creation on the state, or has this been an act that's been in place for a while, do you know?
I think it's been in place for a while, but the influx of money there's a lot more state money that
Right.
was put into their budget for communities to attempt to tap into,
Right.
so.
Well, the sooner the better. Get ahead of everybody else. Yeah, they will be. So the proposed contract is requested not to exceed $25,000 and focus on a plan to replace a water distribution main associated with service lines, neighborhood, Jim described it earlier. What is this council's desires, if there's no other questions? I don't mean to cut anyone off.
President Frisbee, make a motion that we authorize the village manager to enter into contract with Brian Newhoff not to exceed $25,000 for the project as outlined.
Easter, second.
Motion made by trustee Holmes, supported by trustee Reister. We'll do a roll call, Christian.
Trustee Fields?
Yes.
Trustee Reister?
Yes.
Trustee Olson?
Yes.
Trustee Holmes?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller?
Yes.
President Frisbee?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for looking ahead into that, Jim. So we have the South County Fire Authority in front of us. We've had an opportunity to review and discuss the 23-24 fire full-year budget. And the request of us is to approve their budget.
President Frisbee, would you like me to speak on this?
Would you please?
Okay. I'll jump ahead, so we probably won't have to do the fire authority talk tonight, but maybe after I'm done. Anyways, they voted to approve the budget. The vote was 4-1 and 1. Vicksburg was an abstention, obviously, because we had tabled it. The only entity that voted against was Village of Schoolcraft, so the budget was passed. I did commit to them, though, that we would still vote on it officially, so that they would know whether we were on board or not. I will tell you that I did meet, because I think this board is aware that the authority is proceeding with looking at purchasing a new apparatus, which is the fireman's term for truck. And it's in excess of $800,000. So I met with the supervisor of Prairie Island Township, which is Mike Tomlinson. He's on the apparatus committee as well. We met with Chief McMullen and the two assistant chiefs for about 2 hours And mainly it was to go over this, to try to identify unassigned funds. And I made the comment earlier that it'd be nice if other boards would work the way we do. So I'm hoping that in the future, the fire authority really adopts a model at least, or a template of how we do things here, because it was very, very laborious in trying to figure out what they had assigned and what they didn't have assigned. So, but anyways, the budget is for the most part pretty straightforward. As I said, of the other entities, 4 of them voted to approve, and one still voted against, so.
Trustee Keller, can I ask, did the Schoolcraft Village indicate why they were voting against it?
It was because of some of the format, how it was presented, they didn't like, and the font size, I believe, of the budget they didn't like, if I remember correctly. So, I don't want to steal all my thunder at the end of the meeting, so I will, I will go in. There have been some changes on the board, and I'll explain those, but those changes have been made and were re-communicated to the village of Schoolcraft, and they were sufficiently accepting on what was done, so.
If,
No, the vote was recorded as a no vote, but then the changes were made after the fact on how it's formulated. So at that point, the village representative said that they were accepting with what was done, and they appreciated the change, so.
if I can add, it was why we recommended to table it. The original budget that we received didn't meet the legislative oversight from the state of Michigan in the way it was presented. So I don't know the Village of Schoolcraft's meeting times, why they went right to a no vote, but that was the most significant thing, and Carl can correct me, but once we sent the email, we sent an email, I asked a few questions, but I also stated the section of the legislative oversight, Board Member Losi is the one who answered my email and corrected the way it would be presented.
So that has been corrected now?
Yes, and staff's recommended approval.
Okay.
So,
It was within less than a day that the correction was made and resent out, so.
Any other questions of Carl or staff? Well, we have the request in front of us to make approval of the 23-24 Fire Authority budget.
Make a motion that we approve the 23-24 Fire Authority budget as presented.
Trustee Olson, I second.
Motion made by trustee Holmes, seconded by trustee Olson. We'll do a roll call, please, Christian.
Trustee Olson,
Yes.
trustee Fields,
Yes?
trustee Reister,
Yes.
trustee Holmes,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes, thank you. Motion carries. So it moves us on to village manager report. Mr. Mallory?
yes. Just an update on the master plan. We did at the last Planning Commission meeting on January 9th, went through an exercise with the Planning Commission soliciting their input on that. But also this Wednesday and Thursday, January 18th and 19th, both at the breakfast and lunch times will be at 4 separate Village of Vicksburg establishments with McKenna and Associate representatives. Myself, I have a conflict, so Christian and Michelle, one of them or both of them, will be with McKenna at one of the locations. Again, more proactively soliciting input. We have a prepped survey that people can fill out right there while they're waiting to get their food. So going to try to get some more input into the master plan and in that, and we'll see where we are at the end of the week.
Jim, is that posted on the village website currently?
Not yet, because it's our experience, and post are best served like that no more than a day in advance, and sometimes an hour. The other item was we are beginning internally to prep for the 23-24 fiscal year budget. We'll be on the next meeting, January 30th, providing council with a summary of that timeline, as well as the additional steps. We've had Zoom calls the last 2 years with, I think, at least five organized neighborhoods. We'll certainly continue those and solicit our public's input on different ideas as we move forward in that. So be pretty detailed plan on moving that forward. There is one, it's not under my report, but we were originally anticipating opening bids for a new village hall facility the second or third week of February. And we met internally as a team with Frederick's Friday morning and felt, instead of attempting to rush to meet that deadline, I approved their recommendation that we'll present that, we'll get the bids out and open them the first week in March. And that'll give us 10 days to really get into the scope of the bids as a staff with Frederick's. And if we're in position to present to the council, that would occur March 20th, is what it's looking like right now.
So that's the first week in March. It's
The
not-
third Monday of March.
Does that put us into the spring school break?
No,
Yeah, the
no,
week
that,
before, isn't it? Okay.
correct. It would not, if ultimately we present and it's approved to move forward, the construction schedule did not get moved back. So that, we're still on time for that. We just felt the amount of time needed to be on some of these bidding boards, we would be in better shape to add 8 or 9 days, whatever it was, to the ability of people to bid on it.
So right from the audit, right into budget season. So there's no rest for the weary. Thank you, Jim. Any other questions that you may have of Jim at this time? No, we'll move on to committee reports. Is the tree committee met?
Nothing.
To talk to Mr. Wonderman. Parks and Rec.
Nothing.
Yeah, it was December, wasn't it? It was the holidays. The Cats, well, they didn't cancel their meeting. It's, so the micro-transit concept, I think I spoke of it several months ago, was a new initiative that they're moving into, which is kind of like a, state-run Uber. It's going to be set up into 4 regions in a county, so instead of running a bus around, they'll run vehicles back and forth on a call within their region. And they won't cross regions, but if you're up on Main Street and you want to go to Drake and need a ride, that's their plan. It's still moving ahead. They say the status is good. So December 29th is area census, and that sets a tone for the transit authority for the next 10 years. And it's typically done in October. And as of the 29th, without meeting before it, they didn't have that information yet. So it had a lot of people in the transit community pretty concerned that CATS and the transit and Metro are all affected by it. So that was a real update I had from that meeting. But that was it. Who we got next? South Planning Commission? Yes. Oh, yes, that's right. I was at that meeting. Shoot, I should have taken notes.
It was all spent on the master plan
It was,
data.
yeah, it was all revolved around the plan. So, yeah, they came back in the similar formatted that we did as a council, they did for the planning commission too, to gather that information. So, and, you know, following it with that, Rick had talked about Wednesday and Thursday being here in the village, just trying to pop up, you know, impromptu to see if we can't motivate other individuals that may not wanted to have come out in the evening and they're coming in for lunch or something, so we'll try to catch them.
The other item of note is, and it was within a spending level that we could approve at staff, but we have outsourced a site plan review to McKenna and Associates to prep and present at the February Planning Commission meeting of an expansion of Apple Knockers, basically. So that's moving forward.
South County Sewer, that meeting was canceled. There's no report on that. And so the South Kalamazoo County Fire Authority.
Okay, I'm back again. As I stated earlier, well, actually, we meet this Wednesday night for the January meeting, but the budget was passed 4-1 and 1, so it wasn't a hockey score, that was actually the vote. There was a caveat that was laid down by Brady Township, because I had stated in the meeting last month that I really thought that once we got into the new year, that we really need to pursue an independent source on looking for where the best place to have a possible new station would be. And I was informed, or the board was informed, that Brady Township will not support any type of independent study. Their reasoning for that was that a study was done, I think 10 years ago, on the fire authority. They paid several thousands of dollars for this study, and basically, you know, I guess more or less stirred up a hornet's nest more than anything else. I didn't go into detail with them. You know, everything that was in that report was not germane to what I was talking about. I was talking about looking for sites only, not the structure, the command and control and all that. So I think there's going to be a little more discussion on that down the road. We did receive the apparatus from Richland Fire Department. As I had stated, we were able to secure it for $50,000, which was $10,000 less than we thought it was going to be. It was outfitted, and I believe it is now in service. It is at Station 1, which I found out is Schoolcraft. I'm not Station 1, 2, 3. I'm not that up on it, but it's at Schoolcraft. So that is in process. There has been some changes to the board. Member Losi, who was Brady Township Supervisor, she was elected chair. And Mike Tomlinson was made vice chair of the board. And I was put on the finance committee. So there you are. I'm still on the apparatus. And we did sell the old truck, the old apparatus, for $7,500. That was the high bid for that unit. So they were pretty happy with it because they were thinking they were only going to get $7,000 for it. So that's my report. We have a meeting Wednesday night. So.
Thank you, sir. This is the time for citizens' comments for non-agenda items. If there's anything on your mind you'd like to speak to this council about, now's the time to do it.
We do have some citizens on Zoom, so if they do wish to speak, if they want to hit the raise hand button at the, with their cursor at the bottom, I'll keep my eye on that, and maybe if anyone in the room wants to speak, we can start there.
We'll give them just a moment if there's anyone online that raise their hand.
Not seeing
Not seeing any.
people online hitting the raise hand button, so.
All right, well, we'll move on to trustees' time. Start with trustee Fields.
I would just like to add to what most everybody else here has said this evening. This was my first sit-in on this audit process, and it's obvious from everything that was said by the auditors and everything they presented that staff has done and council has done just a fantastic job of getting the numbers where they need to be and beyond. So greatly appreciated, and look forward to watching it continue.
Trustee Holmes.
I made a comment earlier that was really a moment of levity where I said it's not bragging if it's true, but I do believe, though, that what I look at as exceptionalism, and I celebrate exceptionalism, and I think that this village should be very proud of the way that Mr. Mallory and his staff, as well as the council, this team together really has done a tremendous job, I think, to address the needs of the residents and the transparency in which we've done it. So Jim, commend you. Michelle, wish Ryan the best. Thoughts with you. And I'd also like to say, as I've done in the past, I would like to acknowledge a village resident. And subsequently, I would like to thank Norma Palmer for her contributions to South County and the village of Vicksburg. Norma is a long-term resident of the village and has been active in the community in her church. Norma's only downfall is that she's a Green Bay Packer fan, and however, most of us are willing to overlook that blemish on what is a person of impeccable character and grace. She's an example of what is best about our community and what we all should aspire to be. Thank you, Norma. Happy 90th birthday.
Trustee Olson.
At the last meeting, towards the end, we had a discussion about bringing people into Vicksburg and how the businesses and the residents wanted to see more activity in the village. And I suggested New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve festivities here in town and fireworks. The next day I went at the house, I called Mayor Tom Lowry of Three Rivers, who's a good friend. And years ago, Tom had a problem, is that the company that did their fireworks quit doing them. And I said, well, call Menden, because Menden's got the best fireworks around. And so they did, and they hired Wolverine. Well, in the last few years, things have changed, and Wolverine is no longer doing small-town fireworks. There are only a couple of businesses in the area that still do that, and one's small-town fireworks. But anyhow, I talked to the Chamber of Commerce in Three Rivers, and they gave me a couple of names to try, and I did a little digging. The big problem is with everybody else is finding good workers and finding talented people and being able to retain them. And so this is why a lot of companies, unless you're Portage or Kalamazoo, they probably won't do you. So there are still companies out there that'll do it, but I think it's something we need to take a serious look at. We have a great turnout for the Christmas parade. If we can do the same thing on New Year's Eve, and there's 4 municipalities that still do fireworks in this area on New Year's Eve. Kalamazoo's the big one, South Haven, and then there's 2 others. But other than Kalamazoo, they'd be the closest to us. And I think we could take a bite out of Kalamazoo and get some of those people from Kalamazoo and Portage and the outlying areas to come to Vicksburg. We could have as big a turnout for New Year's Eve as we do for the Christmas parade and, you know, some of our other festivities. I think it's something we need to take a serious look at. So, happy with the budget, proud of our police department. I know we're having problems getting officers just like everybody else, but we can't compete with the casinos. And that. Yesterday, I got to see Portage Police and Fire at their finest. There was an accident that I witnessed on Shaver Road. A woman and her husband and were out walking their dog on Shaver down by Sugarloaf Lake, and a lady veered off the road and struck the woman, thus breaking her arm and other injuries. I happened to be lucky. I had my cell phone with me and called 911, and I said, send me everybody, and they did. I've talked to some of the news agencies, and they've heard nothing. Tomorrow I'm going to try and swing by her home on Shaver and check in on her. But distracted driving is a big problem. And I can't say that's what it was, but I know it's caused a lot of accidents, even, and I see it even here in Vicksburg, people talking on their cell phones and this and that. And put the phones down, people. Somebody's life is more important than your phone call. So, thank you.
President Pro Tem Keller.
I'm all set, thank you.
I just want to quick thank all of you who attended our strategic planning workshop Saturday. I think it went over really, really well. Set the tone for the next couple of meetings. I appreciate Jimmy bringing in the DBW and Mr. Sanderson, Chief Sanderson coming in as well. So thanks. Michelle Morgan, thank you very much. Jim, thank you. You guys are killing it. You got a good team, good staff. And as we talked with the police, we need to continue this and make it an enjoyable place to work and retain these valuable employees. So, well done. I'm going to throw you a curveball, Jim, and beat me up later if this comes out of nowhere. But and I wanted to ask you earlier in the budget review or the audit, what do you account the savings in DPW to? Seemed like we had a substantial drop or a noticeable drop in expenses.
Because the prior year, I think we might have front-loaded the DPW building. We're going back a few years. There used to be a dedicated resolution to DPW, which historically we could find no significance why that was, so we took that out of it. And going back to what we talked about internally, there's a conversation, and it's 6 on one side, half a dozen on the other, so it's not worth the energy. But our 101 and 204 money are all general fund money. So any balance that's listed in 204, which is DPW listing, really falls into that 143%, can be used anywhere.
Right.
So,
Well, I don't see Randy's on, but thank him too for his dedication and,
Randy's always on YouTube.
all right,
So
well, thank you, Randy.
There's a
Well,
DPW
job well
question,
done.
he'll ship me a text right away, so.
No, but that's good. The numbers, the expenses are trending and the income is trending better. So it's, you've used the word progressive at times and I've always struggled with it, but you're making me a fan of the word progressive. What you've done with this community is exceptional and commendable. So thank you. All right, so enough of that. That's all I had for this evening, so thank you all very much. Entertaining the motion to close this council session.
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's closed. Thank you.